So now it does lead you to believe, because there won't be a sequel to this movie, according to Todd Phillips, which is the next one they're going to make, and which is the next one they should make. So I posed the question to you guys in the chat here as well, because Drew and I are going to have a conversation about this real quick. I do want to check with Ryan. Ryan, do we have a hard out, or can we go 5-10 minutes long today?
We can go 5-10 minutes long.
Yeah,
okay, hell yeah.
We can have a conversation. So yeah, which is the next DC Comics villain that should be made into its own standalone film? It doesn't even necessarily have to be R-rated. It could just be what's the standalone movie that's going to work for them.
Do you want me to go first?
If you want to think for a second, I can go first.
I mean, I have mine, but yeah, go ahead.
So my opinion is that I think the DC Comics villain that would be the most interesting to see would be Clayface.
So funny. I literally talked about Clayface on Collider Mailbag.
Really?
He was one of my favorite villains as a kid growing up. He also scared the shit out of me as a kid.
So there's a lot of really famous villains. Obviously, you have Mr. Freeze and the Riddler, and you have Penguin, and you have Poison Ivy, and there's tons. There's literally tons. The reason I say Clayface is there was really this incredible origin story that they had on the Batman animated series in the early 90s, the Bruce Timm series with Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy. My favorite. It's this story where like this actor who has kind of a jacked up face, he's kind of involved with the mob, and he uses this stuff that's like undefined and like what it looks like is like a hair gel container, and he rubs it on his face and it smooths his face out, and it chemically makes his face look all like movie starish. And he goes out there, and I think it's like he owes them money or something like that, but they end up either dumping him in a vat of this stuff or making him drink it or something like that. Whatever it is, it turns him into Clayface, who's this like big blob of clay, this big monstrous looking thing.
Yep.
And I always really was struck by how cool of a story it was, because it was on a kid's show, but it felt like such a simple story that like really stuck with me as a kid. And then I remember years later in my 20s when I watched it again, I was like, wow, that was really well done.
And I think with now where we're at with CG and practical, you could make a sick Clayface.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want it to be all crazy and like wild looking like Venom. I would really want it to be a lot more grounded. Just like I wouldn't want him to be insane like, Hydro Man or the Sandman. I don't want him just
Why not?
Yeah, like this image right here. I don't want him like taking on cars, and I want him to be like a human-sized or slightly larger thing that can kind of like change his shape and go through bars like he does in the coolest ones in the comics. I think it would be really fascinating, and I think because of the fact that in his non-human form, he's mostly going to be defined by his his voice. I actually would love to see him as Andy Serkis. I would love to see Andy Serkis.
Oh, that's sweet.
I
love that.
You don't need to have like that story where he's a movie star, because I think Andy Serkis could be a far more interesting character than just like a movie star. But I think if you base the story around Andy Serkis as this regular guy who gets involved with the wrong people, and when you put that stuff on, he becomes Clayface. I think it's such a cool idea. I think physically he could do such wonders, and maybe you get enough real life Andy Serkis there. It's finally the moment that he gets recognized as the talented, insanely talented actor.
Incredibly
that
talented.
he actually is.
He needs to win an Oscar before he's done on his run.
He just doesn't get the credit for it.
Right, because you don't see him.
No.
But even he is amazing in the MCU.
Yeah, so I would adore seeing that movie. I think you could even do something really cool. What if Peter Jackson directed it? What if you had Peter Jackson direct?
Which Peter Jackson? Lovely Bones?
Yeah, no, it's Peter Jackson who makes movies that are good.
Yeah.
He's still capable.
No, he is.
Older, like horror Peter Jackson, like Heavenly Creatures type of like weird, didn't he write The Frighteners? That's him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that era Peter Jackson I think would be a very cool thing to see. So that's my vote for the next villain.
So I'm just going to straight up steal our good friend Coy Jandro's post that he made on Twitter the other day, because I saw it, I read the whole thing, I thought it was brilliant, and then we had this conversation yesterday or today, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. So what he says, and it's a lot, it's like 7 tweets, but essentially he's saying that it needs to be Mr. Freeze. It should be Mr. Freeze. He's already one of, if not the most sympathetic villains. He used the goodwill garner from Joker and make the first villain's love story. He wants to see like the Notebook, This Is Us style Nicholas Sparks love story between Nora and Victor. Between Nora and Victor, and then they're starting to get old, they're in love, and then boom, after Victor's gotten his 4th doctorate, Nora's struck down with the incurable disease. 3rd act, from that time we jump to Nora being in stasis for years and Victor overcome with guilt and frustration, having put his entire life into saving her, but can't do anything to bring her back. Young Victor is Sterling K. Brown from This Is Us, and his father in This Is Us is played by Ron Cephas Jones, who could be old man Mr. Freeze, old man Victor Freeze. And if you look and see Ron's face, it's perfect.
Yeah, he does have the look. He does have the look that's really, really set up for it. I think it's a cool idea too.
I love it, man. And I love Mr. Freeze.
Me too.
Yeah.
There's a comic book called Gotham Central that's written by Ed Brubaker, which is one of my favorites. And it's a story of the Gotham Police Department. And kind of the whole premise of the story is that like basically like the police department all kind of resent Batman for like doing their job. In the very first issue, one of the cops like busts into a room and like Victor Freeze is like holding someone hostage, like a little girl. And the one guy standing there, and Victor shoots his partner with the ice gun. And then I think he, maybe with a regular gun, the guy explodes. And and it's so like weird, frightening, sadistic, way more grounded than like any cartoon version of Victor Freeze we've ever gotten.
Right.
That it like totally reminded me. I remember the first time reading it, of like, oh yeah, this guy's really scary. This guy is not Schwarzenegger. This guy is like a really interesting villain. And I think seeing some of that would be really, really cool. I think it's a great suggestion.
Yeah. Thanks, Coy. Thanks for helping me out today, man.
So do you think it's a good idea to go forward with these origin stories or not?
It's tough because like you say that and I say this and I'm like, I'd watch both those movies.
Right.
I'd watch them in a heartbeat.
Totally.
But the idea of being able to do this again, this has never been done ever like this. And it just feels very difficult to execute.
Yeah,
it really does.
It's just like this worked for such specific reasons. You know, it's really hard to create that again. And the problem with it is because you really want, this movie had such artistic integrity, that like, you know that most of the time you're not going to get that lucky. You know, most of the time the studio that's making it, the production company, the producers, they're going to have some say on who gets cast and what stays in the movie and the script. And you know, if you spend $150 million on the next one because it needs to have lots of CGI, instead of making $800 million, it makes $450. It's probably still good enough for you to make another one, and that one's going to lose money. And then it was this bad thing that we all remember.
And the other thing about this that I think really matters is it's grounded in our world.
Yeah.
In the sense of like, even with Clayface and Mr. Freeze, you have to still put in superpowers, essentially.
That is true. Like Two-Face is probably the one you could get away with. Two-Face.
That's what Andrew Fudge was just saying. My money's on a Two-Face movie, and I'd be into that. I always loved Two-Face's origin in Batman. I mean, it's been done so many times now.
Just recast Tommy Lee Jones and tell him to just play it straight.
so good.
Anyway,
8.9 on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes, it's got a 68% by critics, which I find pretty fascinating and honestly somewhat appalling, because even if you don't like the subject matter or like maybe what you think the message is,
giving this movie a negative review seems insane.
It's a phenomenally made film.
Yeah.
It really truly is. Like, you can't pick apart. I mean, I was